What's going on, guys? Dr. Andrew Fix back here for another episode on the code. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm super excited to bring another awesome interview episode to you guys. Dr. Lloyd Glauberman joining us today. And he's a psychotherapist from the New York area. He's been a psychotherapist for over 40 years. He's got his doctorate in psychology. And we're talking about, right before we hit record, this concept of lifestyle intelligence. And I'm looking forward to diving into that with Dr. Lloyd here today. So, Lloyd, thank you so much for joining me here on the code.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you, and I'm excited to dive into this. What I want to make sure we do before we get into how we can all better manage our lifestyle and everything, can you
Mhm.
just do me and our listeners a huge favor and just more thoroughly introduce yourself, Lloyd? You've been in this psychotherapy world for so long. You were just telling me about how so much has changed from like when you grew up to the life that we all live now in 2025 and beyond. So, tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay. Well, I was born in the late 1940s at a time when terms like health and wellness didn't exist. Uh, that term actually wasn't in the cultural vernacular wellness until like 1959. A fellow actually a physician, somebody in your business by the name of Halbert Dunn, came up with this concept.
Hmm.
Wellness, right? It was a combination of feeling well and fitness. Okay. So he was the first to start talking about the idea that mind and emotions and body and stuff was really important. Okay. Yet nowhere was that to be found again until the 1970s, when suddenly everybody was beginning to talk about wellness. People were talking about health. Things were changing because suddenly we had much more information as a consequence of research, medical research, like heart disease. That was the thing that was the big intro back in the 70s. Bypass surgery, cholesterol. We all heard that kind of thing, right? So you would think that given the fact that it took that long from 1959 to the mid 1970s for wellness to suddenly appear, that would have a dramatic impact going forward to further improve the overall quality of health and wellness in the culture.
Mhm.
What's happened since the 70s? Things have gotten progressively worse, catastrophically worse. So how does that fit? How does more information, more knowledge, more doctors telling this to their patients resulting in catastrophic consequences? I've been part of watching the entire thing. I lived the whole thing on both sides of the equation, doing everything wrong and figuring it out along the way and starting to do things correctly. All right. So, what is, hence the lifestyle intelligence? Let's begin with what's our most basic intelligence, right? What is it? It is, what were we born with? We knew how to eat, when to eat, when to sleep, and when to move. Eating, sleeping, and moving. Sound familiar? Right? Okay, everybody, this is it. The beginning was lifestyle intelligence. Sensation was cognition. That's all a little infant knows. What is it experiencing? It's never confused when it's hungry and when it's full, when it needs to move, when it needs to sleep. Infants do what they do,
Mhm.
and they do it very well, right? Okay, so what happens? Well, it's called environment, which can be very hypnotic, especially the family environment. You're looking and listening to somebody right now who lived through that, obviously completely blind, deaf, and dumb. My mom was a wonderful woman. She loved me, but she was also a housekeeper, like so many women in the 50s. So she felt good when I was eating because that made her feel She was being a good mom. So I would come home from school. She said, "You want something to eat?" Was I hungry? Of course not. But I
Yeah.
wanted to please my mom, right? So she said, "Oh,
Let's eat
there's some
something.
salami and there's some salami in the refrigerator. Okay, I'll eat a half a salami sandwich." Dinner was 3 hours later. Was I or was I hungry? Of course not. Did I eat? Of course. Why? It was dinner time. That's what you do. That's part of the family trance, right? What you do, what you eat, how much you eat. Think about how often you watched the same short film over and over. Oh, after a while, it's not a film, it's in your brain and it repeats itself over and over. That's the beginnings of stuff, right? So when I was in high school, I weighed what, 35 pounds more than I do now without a clue. I used to try to figure out why I couldn't lose weight. I was
Yeah.
doing buying things out of the back of magazines, the kinds of things you wrap around your stomach, these plastic inflatable things, like maybe this will get me ripped. I was clueless. And then in retrospect, I understand what it was. It
Hmm.
was the family trance, it was the cultural trance, and this is what everybody did.
Yeah.
Now things are even more hypnotic because you and I are on a screen and we know screens dominate everything,
Hmm.
including our ability to move.
Oh,
Screens,
totally. I was just
that,
having this conversation. We just got back from traveling, and you were mentioning, that infants only know one way to do things. They eat, they sleep, they move. They know, they know how when it's time to eat, when they're hungry, when they're not. We have a little one that just turned one, and it's amazing, right? Watching him as he goes through things, how much he just wants to play and this and that. But whether it's because we, his parents, look at them and he's interested in it because we're so interested in it and now he wants our cell phone or something, or it's because the screen is just so hypnotic and attractive, right? And the companies that put billions and billions of dollars behind the advertising costs to keep our attention, keep our engagement, and our attention spans become shorter and shorter. um, we were watching so many children at the airport or on the airplane or whatnot that are, probably 2 years old, just glued to the iPad the entire time. And, surely at some point in time, we'll probably be in a similar boat where we let him spend some time on screens. But right now, with him just newly being one, we're trying pretty hard to keep him off of those screens as much as we can to not get him so dependent and hooked on it all the time.
you're smart enough and focused enough to be able to, and I'm sure you're going to do this well, influence your child enough so that that doesn't dominate his life.
Yeah.
Because right now, parents love it when the kids are on the screen because they don't have to do anything. Like
Hmm.
the kid's quiet, the kid's just watching something. I don't have to do something. I can do something else, and he's not going to harm himself, or she's not going to harm. It's fine. But that's not the way it works. You've
Yeah.
got to be a parent. You've got to pay attention because the world is being taken over by this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like we used to have a concept that had meaning. It was called self-esteem, right? We all know self-esteem, the way we perceive ourselves, positively or negatively. But right now, the self that used to exist in people decades ago, that doesn't exist anymore. Instead of self-esteem, what we really have is selfie-esteem. We have this artificial entity we've created that we sell to the public on screen. That's us now. This person here, no, no. It's out there that we want to get attention. I couldn't think of a better term, but self-esteem had a catch to it. So hence we were left, left with that. But
Yeah.
that's what's happening. People's ability to interact has obviously been seriously compromised. People now are sitting and gaining weight and wondering why. Well, they haven't moved in the last 5 hours. They've been sitting. I mean, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
How does this change? It
Yeah.
has to be from the bottom up. To
Oh,
my mind, schools have to be involved. Families have to be involved. Educational book publishers have to be involved. So what's most important, the themes about healthy living are woven into the fabric of education in ways that allow traditional educational formats to be presented, like math. You could talk about steps during the day. How many steps did you walk today or this week? If you did 25 on Monday, 30 on Tuesday, 12 on Wednesday, you're counting, right? But you're also bringing the importance of steps into people's consciousness and into the educational format. So many things have to be done. And you know that the thing that's at the top of the list that is bewildering is the fact that 12.5 million high school kids have to get to school by 8 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
You can't do a more disastrous thing for health over time than what we are doing to those millions of kids, right? Because we know the disaster that happens when you're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Everything, I mean, you're a doctor, so you know more than anybody. Everything goes wrong, right? Everything. And the thing that is last on the list, aside from cognitive functioning and well-being in terms of being able to fight diseases because you're not well rested, is the fact that when you're sleep deprived, your brain needs energy. So what does it do? It hypnotizes you into thinking you're hungry when you're not. You need to eat.
Yeah, and let's pause on that for a second because you're just getting me amped up on this topic with, you're totally right. When we are deprived of sleep, we're not getting the rest that we need. It sends everything else just haywire, right? So from a hormone standpoint, it causes a complete shift of our hormones. Leptin and ghrelin are hunger and satiety hormones. We start secreting more of the hormone that makes us hungry, less of the hormone that tells us we're full. Like you said, our brain is looking for energy because it didn't get its rest and recovery time. And then what it wants is it wants something that it can have now. It wants something quick. Your hormones are telling you that you're hungry. So you're going to then go grab the thing that's quick and easy, which usually if we're just speaking in, common situations, is going to come out of a package. It's typically going to be something that's pretty darn processed.
High, high quality food, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah. Quote unquote, high quality, sarcastically high quality food
Yeah.
and, ultra processed. And then the other thing that happens too is, we've talked a lot on this show about this concept of like our environment is stronger than our willpower. And when even if you're somebody that has pretty strong willpower and you can avoid making less healthy decisions throughout your day, that becomes harder and harder to do the less rest that you get. And your decision making power or your decision making fatigue becomes much more difficult when we're lacking sleep. And eventually, all of us, right, we're all going to cave to what's easy, what's convenient. We get fatigued from trying to make these tough choices over and over and over again, and we're just going to resort back to what's convenient in our environment right now, or what is someone else doing, what is on my way home from work, I'm going to stop there, or on my way home from school. And yeah, I mean, this just sort of opens up a big can of worms of like, I wanted to kind of ask you the more broad question of like, based on your experience, based on your expertise, what problems are you seeing that are currently existing in like the health and wellness right now? And then, we've already started to talk about the obesity side of things, which is surely like, well, that's one big problem we're all dealing with that we can maybe go down that rabbit hole afterwards. But um, what are some of like the more overarching problems that you're finding that are existing now, just in this concept of health and wellness?
Well, health and wellness, the terms have been around now since in terms of what we we were talking about how it was brought back in the 70s when it kind of fell asleep in the late 50s. It's heard so often that it loses whatever value it has because people are so bored and so used to hearing about health and wellness that they tune it out, right? And they're much because there's so many sexy things out there that they're doing and playing with that it basically, and if there's drugs now available to treat obesity, they're like, okay,
Hmm.
Now I understand. I'm sick. I'm overweight. It's a disease. So I can take a drug and cure my disease. I don't have to be responsible for this. It's kind of all woven into the fabric of how things are right now. It's hard to stand on your own and say no if everybody else around you is doing these other things. You're a
Mhm.
lone wolf out there. And right, so we obviously have a serious problem. And how is this going to be solved? I don't know. But going back to the idea, start at the bottom and work its way from early childhood with families so that at least maybe that a later generation will begin to have enough information to make good choices.
Yeah, it's this root cause approach, right? Like
Yeah.
we can't address things by trying to treat or manage the symptoms, right? The symptoms of the larger problem are all the issues that we're having with our health and in society now. But how we solve those things goes, much farther back, like you said, like woven into the lifestyle and woven into how we grow and develop and learn. Um, just the same in our office, right? Like we don't treat somebody's knee pain by just looking at their knee in a vacuum, right? We have to address the root cause. This could be a training problem.
Oh, sure.
This could be this could be a sleep and recovery problem at the end of the day. They could be doing all of the right things except for not getting enough sleep. And that might be one of the factors that we have to address. But we have to try to figure out like what is the root cause, address those things to get the symptoms to go away
People,
and stay away.
it's very easy in this culture to be hypnotized, right? By what is said, what is seen, so that after a while, okay, it's time for me to check my phone. It's time for me to talk to these people. It's so woven into the fabric, and it really is. Our culture hypnotizes us into certain things, our family, but now there's so many more things going on than there ever was. Because like I said, we had identities as self before, but now our sense of self is splattered all over the world, literally, in terms of who we see, who we are. So it's much more difficult to grab a hold of all of this.
Yeah.
And how are we going to say no to technology? Right? How is it? Maybe somebody will figure out a way maybe in this business. I would imagine that psychotherapy at some point is going to have really useful additions with AI. We're creating realities so you can have people in those realities and have it seem so real that it will function as a memory.
Mm.
Remember, I mean, you might be too young for this one, but you remember the holodeck on the original Star Trek series?
No, I don't.
All right. It was an artificial reality. The computer generated it. So if you wanted to go back to Yankee Stadium and watch a World Series game,
Mm.
it would create it for you. You'd be sitting in the stands and would not be able to differentiate it from actually being there. We're heading in that direction. Now, that can be unbelievably great in terms of getting people into environments where they can relearn or unlearn certain kinds of things. But we're a ways away from that being that involved, maybe 50 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So all the folks around today, that's not going to happen. But it will. But until then, we have to be able to get kids to focus, get younger people to focus on stuff. Because when you're young, it's the hardest time to focus on things that are going to be happening to you. Because I remember I was going to live forever when I was a kid. I was absolutely convinced. I was 9 years old saying that to myself. I remember one summer I actually had that conversation with myself. I was so full of myself at the time. I said, I'm living forever. Right? I said, well, okay, I'm 77 now. So I realized that's not gonna happen. Right? So paying attention to this stuff is, for me, has been useful.
Yeah.
So I figure, okay, whatever works for me, it's got to work for everybody else. We're all the same.
Hmm.
We are all the same that way. Our needs, our emotions, our thought processing, our bodies, our brain waves, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So on that, I think like our needs and our emotions, an interesting question comes up of like, Um, so when so many of us are, we're caught up, right? We're constantly distracted by this need to have our face in front of the screens, right? The phone in front of your hand, the inability to walk away from binge watching of a show or like whatever this might be, or back to the children on the screens at the airport and whatnot. What is it from your professional standpoint? Like, what is it that we are all needing or wanting? Like, what are we wanting or needing that we're caught in front of that screen? Like, we can't break away from it. Um, why are we doing this?
Attention, pure and simple. We get attention. If we have a presence online and we start getting a little bit of a buzz, whoa, people are listening to me. People
Dopamine.
want more. People are questioning. Yeah. So it's you're building that external sense of self, which gets bigger and bigger if your online presence is getting bigger and bigger. And people talk about that all the time, how many people follow them, all of what they're doing on Instagram. It's both entertainment and self-aggrandizement as well, right? There's so many different uses that no matter what you need at a particular moment in time, that phone's going to give it to you
Mm,
immediately.
yeah,
And
immediately.
we know how important reinforcement is in shaping behavior. That's giving you reinforcements all the time.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it's right. So we are creatures of that psychological concept, and it's hard to bust out of it because it is that addictive. But there are people who have the ability to do that, but they're pretty well put together and know how to use their phone and other digital devices appropriately. But a lot of people don't. Their sense of they don't feel that good about themselves. So here's a way of feeling a little bit better. Spend a little bit more time, becomes a little bit more, and then a lot, and then it dominates your life
Mhm.
totally, completely.
Yeah, I think that need for or desire for that immediate reinforcement, immediate gratification is one of the things that makes people sticking with or spending more and more time in health and wellness related things, right? Consistent nutrition plans, consistent fitness and exercise plans, consistent sleep schedules and whatnot, somewhat challenging is because those things all typically come with delayed gratification, right? You can see significant improvements and benefits from these things, but you're not going to see it immediately. You're not going to go to the gym and in one workout, you're going to have anywhere close to the results that you're ultimately looking for. It's going to take repeat, going back again and again and again in the consistency over time to get to where you want to go. And I think it's becoming harder and harder for people to wait for that, right? To wait for that delayed gratification.
That's one of the reasons that I put all of these ideas that I've been talking about into an app was there are ways that you can disengage that may be useful and entertaining
Mm,
so that you can tap into the complexity of your brain and the power that it has if you can get it in the right brainwave state.
yeah.
Okay. So people don't think about brain waves, do they? Never, right? Unless they're doing an EEG or something like that.
Right, right.
Nobody's paying any attention. But we've got four of them. The one we're in right now, and anybody who's watching and listening, beta, which is intellectual focus and learning, straightforward, abstract language stuff. Then you have alpha, which is the relaxation brainwave. So people who meditate, people who do yoga or other relaxation technology, they understand alpha because it gets them into that state.
Hmm.
Then there's then forget sleep for a moment because that's delta. We all know that and how critical it is. So we'll put that to the side. But there's the most interesting of all of them is the in-between state between waking and sleep called theta, right? The hypnagogic state. Everybody's in it once a day when you drift off to sleep. And every so often you're aware of its presence because you get strange geometric designs floating through your head. And you say to yourself, damn, what is that? And then you're asleep and you forget about it.
Yeah.
Well, years ago, I took a hypnotic workshop. This goes back to the mid 1980s. And in the middle of the workshop, the guy who was doing it said, now we're going to do something interesting. There's a very interesting hypnotic technique, but it takes two hypnotists working with one person. The technique was called the dual or double induction, meaning one person listening, right? The person who's undergoing hypnosis, and then two hypnotists, one on each side, each speaking, they're speaking simultaneously, saying different things.
Hmm.
Okay. So I'm both watching, observing, and experiencing the whole idea of multiple trains of thought occurring simultaneously. And I found myself going into a really strange state while this is going on, similar to the state that the person who was the subject was going into.
Yeah.
So people talking simultaneously overload your mind. If done in a pleasant way, it's can be positive because you don't fall asleep, but you are now in the most receptive state you will ever be in. That state, the hypnagogic state. So I said to myself, this might be interesting. Maybe audio programs can be devised, constructed using this kind of idea. So I spent the next few years trying to figure out how to do this, and I made it a storytelling format using Joseph Campbell's myth of the hero as the theme of what each story would be, structured so that the story begins with a person with a problem,
Hmm.
goes out into a world, meets a set of circumstances that's really interesting and powerful, and then two separate stories start up, one in each year, and then the next thing you know, for the next 15 minutes, they stay in the hypnagogic state, which there was a researcher, psychological researcher, who actually put put the phones on people and did EEGs. And in fact, that was the case. We found out that that actually worked that way. People did go into the hypnagogic state and stay there. I use words and phrases to form messages for change. Most of them never noticed. It had really positive impact on what people did.
Hmm.
So the whole idea is people are always looking for ways to change.
Yeah.
People are looking for themes. People are looking for things that may be entertaining and useful. So this was part of what I put together and part of the work that's lifestyle intelligence. This is the part that helps you relax and to motivate you into doing the things that are presented in the way that I am talking to you right now.
Hmm.
So first, give people straight ahead. Okay, this is a useful piece of information. I talk to you for 3 minutes once a day. That's about the longest anybody wants to hear anybody talk is 3 minutes right now. That's a lot for people. 3 minutes, introduce something. Now you want to reinforce it, have them. Anyway, this is the work I've been doing, and I've been doing it now for a number of years because I think it can be valuable, but it's up against enormous obstacles for people actually using stuff like this,
Yeah.
given what they normally like to do.
Yeah, totally. Which, on that note, those of you that are tuned in listening to this episode, we appreciate your time tuning in for more than 3 minutes to make it through this conversation. But yeah, Lloyd, that's interesting. The brainwave side of things. I have a friend that, that's the space that they work in. So I've had this conversation with her a number of times. Tell us a little bit more while we're on the topic. About lifestyle intelligence and the app that you've developed and how that app is used to help people take back
Okay.
control of this.
Okay. It's everybody on some level understands what's important, right? They understand eating is important, quality eating, sleeping, moving. They know these things. It's getting them to do these things. So my job is to present information in ways that it is more likely to be understood, stored, and utilized. Because if it's not utilized, it doesn't matter. So two things. Repetition is important, right? People need to hear things, right? You need one time isn't going to work. So you want to present information, the same thing in different ways, right? And then you want to reinforce what they've already done. Repetition, reinforcement. Do you remember last week when we talked about, I will frequently reference other pieces, and hopefully they will have done that. So I'm saying that's really good because right now you're in the process of reorganizing the way you think, feel, and move. So
Mhm.
repetition, reinforcement, and then, by the way, 3 minutes, Every day you'll hear something. I think I recorded 250 3-minute segments,
Hmm.
a variety of different ways talking to the same issues,
Yeah.
right? Eventually, I mean, I listen to my own stuff to see, okay, am I bored by this, or does this fit with the way I've said these things before? If I think it meant, you know what I mean? I mean, if I can listen to myself, I figure other people can probably listen as well,
It's
right?
it's hard to
I
listen to
mean,
yourself.
it's my stuff, and if I don't get bored, I figure, all right, they're not going to get bored. So the whole idea is to take advantage of those psychological concepts, repetition, reinforcement, that are woven into the fabric of everything.
Yeah.
Right? three
What?
minutes a day, every day, coupled with the audio, other audio stuff,
Mhm.
right?
I think that's
And by the
that's
way,
interesting to hear. Like I think anyone that has children, you recognize this. Anyone who is in a either a job situation or a business where they manage and mentor other people, they understand this, that you can't just tell somebody something one time and expect them that they're going to get it and understand it forever, and you're never going to have to remind them, right? We've maybe heard this phrase, the chief reminding officer. Like parents are the chief reminding officers of their children. They have to has to be a lot of repetition to coach and train somebody in something, and then you have to reinforce that behavior. What does psychology tell us about, like, how many times do you have to hear something, or the converse way, how many times should you expect that you're going to have to remind or repeat or say something in order for that other person to finally start to grasp that
I,
concept?
I, I think I think because in this instance, what people have to do is something that has to be continually done, ongoing, day
Mm-hmm.
in and day out. You know
Yeah.
what one of the most difficult parts, but never spoken a lot to when it comes to people losing weight? This is going to sound ironic and contradictory, is when they're successful.
Mm.
Because before that, what were they on? A journey to get from here to there.
Yeah.
Now they're there. Where do you go after there? There's no place to go. And that sounds, some people say, oh, that's no big deal. For a lot of people, it is a big deal
Mm-hmm.
because the whole thing was built on it's in front of me. I'm driving there. Oh, I'm there. What am I doing? Oh, what am I going to do now? So the whole idea is you've got to get people used to this. Getting there is part one, staying there is part two.
Mm.
And it's not easy.
No, I mean we hear that from people all the time, right? It's like no matter what topic we're talking about, it could be like success in your career, it could be achieving a weight loss goal, it could be training for a physical endeavor, right? A sport or something, and like you get there, you accomplish the thing, and then the wheels fall off. It's like, you
You could
lost
have
a
said it
bunch of weight.
better.
Yeah, you lost a bunch of weight, you gain it back. You used to be an athlete, you had things that you were training for, kept you motivated, and then now your life from a health and fitness standpoint is totally different than it used to be because you didn't have that thing that was in front of you that was keeping you going. Um, yeah, we hear this all the time.
That coupled with another sidebar thing that sometimes is difficult is if you decide to do this and the posse that you hang out with is not doing this and you get there and you're successful and everybody else sitting around the table has a lot of work still to be done, they're not happy. Oh, you look really thin. I'm not sure. I think you might have lost too much weight. Be careful here. You got to be careful. Sometimes people, you know what I mean? Sometimes people have a hard time with your success if they've been trying to do it and it hasn't worked.
Yeah. How do you
So
recommend that, while we're on that, how do you recommend that people combat that or battle that situation that we know is true where you're
if they know going in, they'll be able to figure out something.
mm-hmm.
Uh, But if they don't, then they're worried they're going to lose friends, which is
Right.
a powerful thing. That can be really influencing emotionality. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't want to lose my friends. Maybe I'll gain back a little bit so they'll feel more comfortable with me so I can still go out and hang out and
Mhm.
have a good time with my friends.
Yeah, yeah, that subconscious pull to, like, want to please those other people, or afraid of what the outcome might be if you keep going after the things that you you want to do. Yeah,
By
that's
the
a
way, on that, a corollary of that topic, I had to deal with the way my mother responded to the changes that I was making in my life, right? I mean, her lifestyle was responsible for, with no intent to have me gain weight. She didn't know what she was doing, and I wasn't fat, but I clearly wasn't fit, right? So I remember when I'd gone through my metamorphosis and lost a bunch of weight, and my life was now different. And I remember visiting my mom in Florida, and she said, "Oh, Lloyd, can can I make your favorite dinner? You know, pot roast?" I said, "Ma, I don't eat meat anymore." She says, "What? You don't eat meat?" Yeah, yeah. I actually told you that last year when I was here. I don't do that anymore. What? You don't eat meat? Okay. How about my chocolate cake? Is that okay? Can I make that for you? Said, "Ma, I don't. I've during the entire time I knew my mom, she was maybe angry 5 times. I never saw her angrier because she felt as if I had abandoned and betrayed her
Mm.
because I wasn't doing her lifestyle anymore. She couldn't feel like my mom. Made me feel bad, but I'm sorry. I'm not going back to habits that are not useful
Yeah.
because you don't understand how to accommodate the changes that I've gone through.
Hmm.
But a lot of people will have to deal with stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you just said about that you were heavier in high school than what you are now. I think I heard you say 30 pounds approximately. And while we're talking on this topic of like fitness journeys and whatnot, maybe somebody having more weight on their frame, more mass on their frame than they want to. Is there anything that we didn't cover yet that like any other thoughts you have as it relates to lifestyle intelligence or just how we think, act, behave, as it relates to like the very obvious obesity problem that we have here in this country?
Other than pay attention and evaluate yourself appropriately.
Hmm.
How much can you do to make these changes? How much effort are you going to put in? Because most people underestimate what they're capable of. So self-evaluation, because you're going to feel much better if you do this without other stuff, paying attention. And because the one thing that we're all capable of doing is the self-con. That, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like how many times? I mean, I went through that yesterday when this was a day of do weight training. Okay. And I could hear that voice in the background. Do you really want to do it today? And so with a couple of vulgarities, I said to myself, I made sure I followed through on this, right? Because I know every scam that I ever ran on myself. So I'm sensitive to that.
It's
And
easy
we
to
all do
do.
it.
Hmm. Yeah, we all do it. It's easy to do. Yeah, and I'm with you. I think we do underestimate like what we can get done. I think sometimes people overestimate what they can do like in a short period of time, but they drastically underestimate what they can do in a long period of time. And journeys and changes like this aren't going to happen overnight. So yeah, I think we have a tendency to underestimate what we're truly capable of.
And don't get seduced by television food commercials.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which that there's nothing quite like those commercials. I mean, there isn't an adjective to appropriately describe how dysfunctional, disturbed, and awful they are for this culture. I
Hmm.
mean, when a cheeseburger with everything on it, bacon cheeseburger, comes at you and is the size of a spare tire on the screen, you have
Right.
to ask, like, are you kidding me? And how many people are looking at that saying, oh, yeah, that looks pretty good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or else we wouldn't be watching it
Yeah.
because it wouldn't be able to pay for itself.
The
How
marketing
many,
dollars, yeah, there's definitely a big ROI on those marketing dollars, that's for sure.
oh my goodness. Oh my
Um,
goodness.
well, as it relates to that, like don't get caught up, don't get hypnotized by the commercials and whatnot. Like, who are we talking about when you think about like through this lens or through this concept of lifestyle intelligence? Who is most at risk for either developing or continuing to see serious health problems worsen. Um, which is like, what's the group of people that we're most talking about that are most at risk for falling prey to these types of situations?
Well, if you're born into a family right now where everybody has already been hypnotized by the culture into not moving, eating too much, not getting enough sleep, then all you will ever know is what you're looking at in terms of the way people should look.
Yeah, you'll think that's the norm, right? Like,
That
yeah.
will be it right there. And how many families is that at this point in time? A whole lot. It's amazing how we model behavior. Uh, you know what? One of the things I've noticed by just watching families walk is that, and this is really, I always found it completely almost impossible, but it's done. A child will choose a parent and model their walking without ever knowing that's happening. And if you're walking behind the family, you can see, oh, that kid is modeling this parent's walk, usually same sex. Yeah, and it's like, how do you do that? How do you think how incredible our brain is that it could see, watch, model, and get us to move our body in this way that duplicates the gait of our parent.
Mhm.
That just goes to show you the capabilities of the human brain.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Well,
So
now,
that would give you an idea. If it can model that, what else? Oh, by the way, I can tell you from my own experience, having nothing to do with health, right? Going back to 30 years ago, I was having a disagreement with my wife, right? And so I was angry about what I was angry, and then she was responding. And while she was talking, I happened to glance at the mirror I was sitting opposite at, and I could see the expression on my face.
mm,
What was on my face? The one expression that my father used to have that I hated was on my face.
mm,
Now, how would I ever know that unless I accidentally bumped into the mirror image, literally, and I'm going, holy shit, my goodness, how did that happen? I felt like I needed an exorcism at that point. Get this thing out of my body. Seriously. So if our brains can do that, think what else it models. Think
mhm.
about all the subtleties it can pick up and end up in what we do, think, feel, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, our brains are amazing, but when they focus on things that are awful or bad, they do it anyway. And then we find ourselves going, what's going on here? How did uh, you know the rest.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and now being the walking gait expert that I am, I already watch people walk all the time when I'm out in public to pick up on little subtleties. Now I'm going to be looking for what you said. I'm going to be watching families walk and seeing which adult the children are walking like.
Usually it's same sex.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Well,
crazy stuff.
and like you said, like what gets modeled for us, my a few members of my family and I, we were out at a sporting event a few nights ago. We went to now back to the sleep thing. We got a little bit less sleep this night because we went to this late basketball game, and we go into this beautiful stadium, right? And 95%, maybe 95% is an underestimation. Probably more than 95% of people, after you check in, you swipe your ticket, whatnot on your phone, and you're going upstairs, everyone's taking the escalator, right? Well, there's a beautiful set of stairs right there. There's actually there's two railings that are running down the middle of the staircase. So there's like a left column you could go, a middle, and then a right sided. And I looked to my dad, my sister, and my wife, and I said, we're going up the stairs, right? Like we got this perfect set of stairs here. We're all able-bodied. We got this long line of people going up the escalator. I'm like, we're not carrying, if you're at if you're at the airport or something, you're carrying a tons of luggage. I totally understand the purpose of using the escalators. We use it all the time. We're pushing our son in the stroller and whatnot rather than trying to carry the stroller up the flight of stairs. Hugely convenient. But you're at a sporting event, you're not carrying anything. I was like, guys, we're going to go up the stairs. And of course, we're going up the stairs or on the way back, we're going down the stairs. We're traveling faster than the people that are taking
Sure.
the escalator, right? Because we're not just standing there. But it's like you have to be intentional to make these decisions, right? Our life is just becoming more and more convenient. Things are being made more and more to make us more and more comfortable. They're making chairs more comfortable so that you spend more time in them and you move less. We have suitcases with rolling wheels on them so you don't have to carry your luggage to the airport. We are, there's scooters, there's bikes that are electric that you don't have to walk. You can just ride a scooter for a few bucks to get to where you want to go. And it's becoming more and more important to make the decision to do the thing that is just a little bit harder, which is going to be better for your lifestyle. So yeah, I don't know. That was just coming to mind when you were
I I
talking
couldn't I
about this.
couldn't agree with you more. And one of the other things that we don't pay any attention to for obvious reasons is that the process of becoming ill or dysfunctional is so slow and
Yeah.
so silent that we never know it's going on
Hmm.
until it's going on. Right? Does anybody know what it feels like when plaque gets deposited in your heart arteries? Does anybody know what that feels like? No. But as soon as one of those vessels gets closed off, suddenly you're aware of it. All of that sensory information that will eventually lead to chronic disease is invisible. We have to imagine in our heads, make visual models of what will happen so as to keep ourselves on track. Like, I can't do this because this will eventually lead to whatever disease we might be thinking about at the time, whatever this will cause if I don't do this.
Hmm.
That should be part of everything. We have to visualize stuff that is happening, but we can't sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
That
Totally.
that's a totally different kind of thing. But at some point, hopefully, that will be woven into the fabric of what people do when they start teaching people how to take care of themselves. You have to think about what you're eating to know the long-term consequences.
Yeah.
Because by the time your body tells you, hello, it's too late.
Yeah, you're pretty far behind the eight ball at that point. So don't get sucked into that bag of chips while you're watching the commercials with
I
the
don't
bag.
understand how people can do that at this point. I mean, I used to eat all that crap. I grew up with it. That was all that it was. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I still worry that I did damage to myself back before I changed.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
I don't know. And there's nobody in there telling me there's no pictures being taken. Fortunately, I haven't had any symptoms suggesting that, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the time where both of my parents used to smoke cigarettes when I was younger, and they don't now. And I know far fewer people these days that do smoke cigarettes or excuse me, I know far fewer people that smoke cigarettes these days than I used to, because we all know that they're not good for us, that they're linked to so many bad things. And one thing that you don't see, at least I don't see anymore, is I never see a cigarette commercial anymore.
No.
I'm looking forward to the day where we don't see the commercials for all of the food products and things that we know, the soda, the whatever that we know are bad for us, that are making us ill slowly over time. I'm looking forward to the day when maybe we move in that direction where those things aren't there, and then maybe we'll have more car commercials or whatever else is out there. But getting rid of the stuff that we know we shouldn't be putting in our bodies. Lloyd, before we start the process here of winding things down, I want to do a quick recap. I'm looking at like a little sheet of notes here that I took, and I think we started out the conversation talking about how growing up when we're developing, excuse me, infants know when to eat, when to sleep, when to move, and over time, with all of the distractions and things that we're inundated with, though that decision making process becomes extremely clouded, and we get
Completely.
yeah,
Completely disrupted. It doesn't exist anymore.
yeah. And we
No,
get
no sensory information is being used whatsoever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Our attention is constantly being competed for by various things, whether it's commercials, whether it's phones, whether it's whatever. And then as a result of that, our health and our ability to take care of ourselves is just continuing to decline. And we're seeing rates of illnesses, rates of diseases, rates of obesity and things just continue to climb, despite the fact that we have more and more and more information than we've ever had before. We know how to better take care of ourselves. Professional athletes and whatnot, to use an example, perform at higher levels than those in years past, but as a general public trend, we continue to trend in the wrong direction, right? And we don't have to look very far to know that that is true. I think we've given people a good understanding of like we have to evaluate and assess ourselves and know like where can some of these changes take place, and we have to pay attention and we have to analyze ourselves appropriately to know what are you going to be able to do, how much effort are you going to be able to put forth to making some of these changes. And then we talked about the importance of, like with the app that you're working on, repetition and reinforcement, right? We have to hear the same message, listen to the same message over and over and over again in various ways, and then we have to reinforce that to make that a ongoing habitual part of how we're going to take care of ourselves on a day in and day out basis. Anything else that we left out before we give you a chance to tell us where we can all find you and gather some more information?
Okay, one last thing. It has to do with the one thing you can't fall prey to is the idea that you have to be perfect.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because number one, it's impossible, and number two, if you have that thought that I need to be perfect, that means that if you do good, you do good, you do good, and then you slip a little bit, you'll be really upset and you'll junk the whole thing.
Hmm.
There's going to be a 3 steps forward, step and a half back kind of evolution of this. Life is about what you do most of the time, not all the time. So if you can get this thing moving, so most of the time you're doing the right stuff, you'll see the changes evolve, you'll feel good about yourself, and you will become a more resilient person. So we
Yeah.
have to put that in the mix. Otherwise, people will forget that. Failing every so often is a good thing
Yeah, for sure.
because it's essential for resilience. So just I'm glad you asked that because I forgot to mention that, but that's essential.
Yeah, I like that. I might have to use that saying, life's about what you do most of the time, not all the time. So
Feel free, it's yours.
I think that's a good place to wrap things up. Lloyd, for those that tuned into this episode and want to explore this further, what's the best place for people to find you, learn more information about lifestyle intelligence, and or reach out to you going forward?
Okay, there's a site, Lifestyle Intelligence LQ, all.com, all one word. LifestyleIntelligenceLQ.com. That's where I talk about this and I talk a little bit more specifically. And if they're interested in, there's a way to get and they can test the app is a 2 week free trial kind of thing. So they can explore and see whether it's useful for them. I mean, I'd love for that to happen, but I understand.
Awesome. We'll put those things in the show notes, you guys. For all you that tuned in to listen to us here on the code, we really appreciate your time. Dr. Lloyd, Dr. Andrew signing off here. We hope to catch you guys on another episode. If this was your first time joining us, you've not heard me say this, but if you've been here for other episodes, I'm sure you have. Go to the review section on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Drop a review on there, leave a rating, leave a review. Let us know some questions that you might have or some things that you liked. And we'll look forward to catching you guys on the next episode of The Code. Thanks, Lloyd. We'll talk to you later.
My pleasure. Thank you.